Clara Bennett grasped the last eviction notice in her quaking hands, the striking red letters searing into her consciousness. The rent is past due. This is your last notice. She exhaled slowly, her gaze flitting about her snug yet inviting apartment. The space she had once embraced as home for the last 2 years now resonated with the ominous tension of a ticking time bomb. The last several months had been unforgiving. Her job loss had plunged her existence into disarray. Each application she submitted appeared to vanish into an abyss. She had depleted her savings, turned to friends for loans, and even foregone meals to make her resources last. Yet, in that moment, all that remained was emptiness. She wrapped her coat more snugly around herself and made her way to the landlord's office. Daniel Harper was not an ill-intentioned man, yet he bore a reputation for his unwavering strictness. She questioned whether he would extend any mercy, yet she felt compelled to make the attempt. In the grip of desperation, individuals found themselves compelled to actions they had never envisioned. The corridor that stretched toward his office was hauntingly silent, the gravity of her predicament bearing down with each footfall. She paused, her heart racing in her ears, before finally raising her hand to knock. "Enter." A deep voice beckoned from within. Daniel settled into his chair, glasses resting delicately on the bridge of his nose, as he sifted through a pile of papers. He was at least a decade her senior. His presence was authoritative yet approachable. He lifted his gaze, his piercing blue eyes assessing her features before he placed his papers down. "Emily," he said, his voice steady, "I take it you're here regarding the rent." She forced down the lump in her throat and gave a slight nod. "I understand that I'm lagging, but I simply require a bit more time. I recently found myself without a job, yet I have been diligently submitting applications far and wide. Few could merely—" His gaze softened ever so slightly. He reclined in his chair, fingers interlaced in contemplation. "Many tenants before you have faced similar challenges. I refuse to feign indifference." He released a breath, as though contemplating a heavy thought within his mind. "However, I cannot allow matters to drift indefinitely." Her stomach tightened with unease. She had anticipated a frigid dismissal, not a moment of uncertainty. "I could present you with something rather unorthodox." He pressed on. "OT charity, just two people helping each other stay afloat during a difficult time. No strings attached." Emily tensed. "What sort of arrangement are we discussing?" His lips quivered, hovering on the brink of a smile, yet not fully committing to the expression. "Time feels heavy these days. If you'd ever like to share a meal or just talk, the invitation's open. No pressure." He gestured toward the seat across from him, a silent invitation to talk beyond the confines of paperwork. "Take your time, free from anticipation." A unique approach to resolving matters. A shiver coursed through her, not born of fear but rather of doubt. "Are you suggesting something along the lines of—" He interrupted her before she could descend into a whirlwind of dire possibilities. "What I envision is a meal shared, engaging dialogues, and a touch of companionship." Her brow knitted in concentration. "That is everything. That concludes everything." His tone allowed for no pretense. "I have observed you, Emily. You maintain a certain distance from others. Perpetually in a hurry. Forever bearing the burdens of existence. When did you last take a moment to savor a meal free from the burdens of stress?" She paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. It had been an eternity. He presented you with a choice, not a requirement. Her instincts urged her to tread carefully, yet his expression held no hint of malice. He appeared genuinely sincere, if nothing else. What options were left to her? Taking a deep breath, she gave a subtle nod. "Very well. I shall endeavor to give it a go." Daniel reached out his hand, and she accepted it with a firm shake, sealing an understanding that resonated with a depth far beyond the confines of any lease renewal. As Emily stepped into the quaint Italian restaurant Daniel had recommended, a peculiar blend of anticipation and anxiety washed over her, leaving her uncertain of what lay ahead. The atmosphere was cozy and welcoming, with the aroma of freshly baked bread wafting through the space. She wore dark jeans and a soft sweater, her attire understated, caught in a limbo between the warmth of a date and the coldness of a business transaction. Daniel sat comfortably in his chair, gesturing for her to join him with a relaxed wave that instantly calmed her nerves. He had abandoned his typical button-up and slacks in favor of a cozy sweater, appearing much less like the polished landlord she was accustomed to. "I took the liberty of ordering wine," he said as she sat across from him. "Figured we might as well make the most of this." She nodded, a flicker of uncertainty lingering in her gaze regarding the unspoken rules of this peculiar arrangement. She expressed her gratitude with a measured tone. "I truly appreciate this. I wish to avoid any misinterpretation." His gaze locked onto hers, unwavering and serene. "This is not a ruse, Emily. I thought you might appreciate a moment of respite. Perhaps I might as well." The waiter approached with their meals, and as they dined, the conversation unfolded with a fluidity that surpassed her expectations. She discovered that he had been married once long ago, but that work and ambition had intervened. Since that time he had kept everyone at a distance, not truly allowing anyone to enter his world. After a brief pause, he confessed, "You remind me of myself, perpetually in motion, eternally pursuing the next desire, never pausing to simply exist." She furrowed her brow, mulling over his words. "I don't really have a choice," she murmured. "To cease is to lag behind. Should I falter, all that I hold dear slips away." "Perhaps," he mused, swirling his wine, "perhaps you have been battling in solitude for far too long." The realization stirred a disquiet within her, for it held an undeniable truth. She had always embraced her independence, yet she recognized the fine line that separated strength from solitude. Following their meal, he escorted her to her vehicle, pausing for a heartbeat longer than required. "Inform me of your availability once more," he remarked. "Take your time." She nodded, her mind racing to comprehend the journey that had led her from a desperate plea for rent to this moment. Bathed in the warm glow of a street lamp, feeling an unexpected lightness that had eluded her for months. Their next encounter unfolded in a setting far removed from the confines of a restaurant. He had extended an invitation to her, to his spacious, meticulously maintained home nestled just beyond the city's edge. The atmosphere was unexpectedly warm, brimming with books and vintage records, reminiscent of the kind of sanctuary that Felt would inhabit. He prepared the meal as she perched on the counter, savoring a glass of wine, their dialogue unfolding effortlessly. She pondered, observing him navigate the kitchen. "You don't strike me as the type who resides alone." He cast a sidelong look at her, a wry smile playing on his lips. One might find it astonishing just how effortlessly one can acclimate to the embrace of solitude. She grasped that truth more than she was willing to acknowledge. In the weeks that followed, their arrangements coalesced into a quiet understanding. They gathered frequently, occasionally sharing a meal, other times simply engaging in conversation. He refrained from any pressure, never suggesting anything beyond the boundaries they had established. And yet, a subtle transformation was unfolding. She sensed it in the intensity of his gaze, in the flutter of her heartbeat as he glided by her. One evening, as they gathered around the flickering flames in his cozy living room, he inquired, "Has it been as dreadful as you envisioned?" She gently shook her head, a subtle gesture that spoke volumes. "No, it has unfolded in ways I could never have anticipated. Delightfully surprising." After a moment of uncertainty, she gave a slight nod. "Indeed." And that was the reality. It was only one fateful night that Emily came to understand the depth of her anticipation for their shared evenings. Daniel failed to send a message. It lacked any formal recognition. Though no promises had been made and no expectations set, the lack of his customary check-in stirred a sense of restlessness within her. She found herself stealing glances at her phone with increasing frequency, letting out a sigh at the stillness that surrounded her. By the following morning, she had persuaded herself to refrain from overanalyzing the situation. He indeed possessed a life after all. Yet, as the hours stretched endlessly, uncertainty began to seep in. Had she misunderstood the situation? Had their arrangement reached its conclusion? Just as she was on the verge of dismissing her thoughts, her phone vibrated with a sudden buzz. "Swing by this evening." The wave of relief crashed over her with an intensity that felt almost overwhelming. Upon her arrival at his abode, an unmistakable sense of change lingered in the air. The atmosphere surrounding them crackled with an unfamiliar tension, a palpable shift that had not existed prior. He seemed more subdued, lost in contemplation, as though he were weighing something carefully in his thoughts. "I've been pondering," he remarked at last, as he poured a drink for both of them. Our time together has been quite abundant recently. She savored her drink, her gaze fixed on him. Could that be considered a negative aspect? He gave a slight shake of his head. No. However, I wish for you to understand that there is no obligation on your part. The remark took her by surprise. I don't, she replied with caution. I truly value all that you've done for me, however. This transcends mere transactions. At the very least, it doesn't seem to convey that impression. A subtle smile danced upon his lips. I was hoping you'd say that. They fell into their familiar cadence. A seamless exchange, a silent connection, yet an unacknowledged tension simmered just below the surface. It was only later, just as she was preparing to depart, that it finally revealed itself. As she lingered by the door, he found himself pausing, caught in a moment of uncertainty. Emily. She turned, her heart racing for reasons she dared not dissect. This caught me off guard, he confessed. Any of it, she said, swallowing hard. I didn't either. For an extended moment, he simply gazed at her, as though contemplating his subsequent action. Before she had the chance to overthink, he extended his hand, his fingers lightly grazing hers. The caress was gentle, bordering on tentative. Yet, in that instant, an undeniable change transpired between them. He remained still, refraining from advancing, holding back any urge to press forward. I simply waited. With a measured grace, she gradually bridged the distance that lay between them. There was a pause, a moment of closeness, charged with emotion but still undefined. No one rushed anything, a soft inquiry rather than a bold assertion. Yet, as he replied, his hands discovering her waist and drawing her a fraction nearer, the uncertainty dissipated. As they withdrew, the atmosphere surrounding them had transformed. There was no way to retreat at this point. Silence enveloped them, words unspoken. There was no necessity for them to do so. She departed under the cover of night, acutely aware that the situation had just taken a turn for the more intricate, and she found herself uncertain if she desired it to be any different. The transition between them was undeniable. What began as a straightforward agreement had evolved into a profound connection, one that neither of them had anticipated. At unexpected times, Emily's thoughts drifted to him, during the morning ritual of brewing coffee, as she strolled through the bustling city, and in the quiet solitude of night, lying in bed and gazing at the ceiling. It had transcended mere gratitude. It was truly extraordinary. She reminded herself to refrain from delving too deeply into it. Yet, the reality was inescapable. She enjoyed his company, relishing the way he made her feel acknowledged, as though she were more than just another individual navigating life's challenges. Daniel, for his part, refrained from pressing further. He continued to reach out, extended invitations for her to come over, and ensured she felt that her presence held significance. Yet, an unfamiliar tension lingered in the air, an unspoken weight that settled between them. One evening, as they lingered in the warmth of his living room, she noticed his gaze fixed upon her. Though he concealed it well, there was a certain intensity in his eyes that held her gaze, refusing to waver. What is this? She inquired, a subtle smile dancing upon her lips. He inhaled deeply, the amber liquid in his glass swirling gently as he contemplated the moment. Merely pondering. Concerning the subject at hand, he paused for a moment, then leaned in, his elbows finding a perch on his knees. On the nature of unexpected transformations. She placed her glass on the table, echoing his stance. Could that be considered unfavorable? His voice was gentle, measured. However, it adds layers of complexity. Emily understood his meaning. A line had been crossed, regardless of their willingness to acknowledge it. What was once a pragmatic answer had evolved into an unforeseen circumstance for both of them. I don't want to complicate your life, she murmured softly. He let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head slightly. It is now beyond the point of possibility. A stillness enveloped them, thick with the weight of things left unsaid. She yearned to inquire about the nature of this connection, to understand its trajectory, yet a profound fear of the response held her back. Instead, she chose the path that resonated with her deepest instincts. She extended her hand, her fingers gently gliding over the back of his palm. Though it was a modest act, he reacted without hesitation, raising his hand to intertwine their fingers. The gentle caress of his hand ignited a subtle tremor within her. She found herself uncertain of the duration they remained in that silence, both of them simply clinging to something delicate and fresh. Yet, in that instant, words held no importance. Both were acutely aware of the direction in which this was unfolding. Neither of them wished to bring it to a halt.